intro. Y'all. Hey. Yeah, I think that's all I got for you. Honestly, I am exhausted. Okay, hi, hello. Today, as I'm filming this, my Daisy Hates video, the first one, is coming out, and I am just exhausted. So if you haven't watched that yet, please go watch it, because I spent like 3 full days on that. Probably more like 4, honestly. So please go watch that one. Today what I am going to be doing is I am going to be going through my best and my worst reads of 2023 so far. I've read almost 50 books now this year. I am way ahead of schedule. I'm only gonna do like 5 each. So yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so I am gonna go through the worst first, and then let's save the best for last, shall we? Okay, first on the list, these aren't in any specific order. Also, I just want to say that these are my preferences. So no one has to agree with me at all. Not hating on these books. These just aren't my taste. So the very first one is The Face Off by Callie Melly. This one is just a hockey romance, and it's new adults set in college. Basically, this book was just, it wasn't just spice. There was just nothing extra to it. Like, it was all just the relationship, and they were either at the ice skating rink and like bickering, or they were in the bedroom. That was basically it. I didn't know anything about their majors. I didn't know anything about their classes. I didn't know anything about their families, any struggles, nothing like that. It was just the relationship. And so for me, I just was not into it. It was just so boring. And also, like, the spice scenes lasted forever. Just in my opinion, they weren't that good. I gave it a pretty decent rating for my feelings on it. I gave it 2 stars, but really probably should be a 1. Then let's go into the next book is A Million Kisses in Your Lifetime by Monica Murphy. This one was such a shame because I know a lot of people really love this book, but for me, there was just an illegal aspect to this. Spoilers, if you don't want a spoiler, I'll put the time to skip to. Do that right now. If you don't want to be spoiled, do it. Okay. In this book, there is a teacher who has sexual relationships with students, and everyone knows it. And he ends up getting a student pregnant, and this student is our main girl's really good friend, and yet our main girl, Ren, treats her horribly and is like super judgmental and is like, well, that's what happens when you sleep with a teacher. That's on her, and that's why I don't do blah, 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 blah. And yet this teacher is like also hitting on Ren as well. No one does anything about it until closer to the end when our main guy character, honestly, I forgot his name. He's the teacher in trouble. And it doesn't even necessarily have to do with the fact that he is sleeping with students. And then this girl who was pregnant loses her baby. And so I'm just like, what? And that was just like a side plot. That wasn't even like the big main struggle plot. The big main struggle plot ended up being that Ren's dad said that he gave her this painting that she really, really wanted when really he didn't. The main boy did. That's found out within an hour after he tells her that he got her this painting, and she gets mad at her dad. She acts like that's the end of the world. But a teacher who is sexually abusing and assaulting and taking advantage of students isn't? And your friend who was pregnant with this teacher's baby and then loses it isn't? Okay. Priorities. Just so weird. I just could not get on board with this one. The relationship, I get it, kind of cute, but it just wasn't enough to get over this strange subplot that no one was seemingly taking serious. So just no. Next book that I have on my worst list is Baby Teeth by Georgie Stage. I included this one in my last wrap-up. I DNF'd this. It was so weird. It's supposed to be like an orphan, scary movie thriller thing. It was trying to do too much all at once. It was simultaneously disgusting and boring, and you don't want that with a read. So I definitely don't recommend this one. I want to say I had just seen like a few things about this book, and so I was very cautious going into it. I had a feeling that I wasn't going to like it, and yeah, turned out I didn't. I don't think a lot of people like this book, which makes sense. It's a very much acquired taste, like different levels. Baby Teeth, no thank you. The next book we have is Vox by Christina Dalcher. This one really is a shame because I really did want to like this book. It just sounded so interesting. It reminds me of The Power by Naomi Alderman or A Handmaid's Tale, a fiction feminist novel, like a dystopian world. And yet it wasn't that. The premise is the government has put a limit on how much women can speak. And so they have to wear these bracelets, and if they go over that limit, they get zapped. Zapped until they die. So you never want to go over the limit. It's from this woman's perspective, and she is very angry about it. The women have to work from home. Girls aren't taught how to read anymore. All they learn is how to balance a household and checkbooks. And so I thought, interesting premise, right? Execution, not good. This woman, she doesn't really do anything. Like, there's no plot to it. It's just a woman being angry. And it's like a feminist novel, and I'm all about feminist novels, but this one was just way too far. She started to hate her own sons, and to me that just didn't make sense. And it all happened within a year, from like when women were allowed to like talk whenever they wanted to when this book was taking place and women weren't allowed to speak anymore. The pacing was off, everything was just kind of off, so I just could not get into it. And then the last book that we have is actually the third book in a series. It is What Lurks Between the Fates by Harper L. Woods. And the first two, decent. Like the first two, I gave 3.5 stars. They were a very decent storyline. It's a fantasy romance. I won't spoil it just because I think it could turn back around. But this third book made me so angry. It's this thing that sometimes authors do where they decide to just completely destroy and pummel their main characters. And I get it. You know, main characters should go through a struggle and it should be hard for them. Like, there should be some adversity, right? Like, the worst thing ever could happen to them. However, you need to juxtapose that with a few wins for the main characters. This book was all losses, all L's. You have our two main characters and they are trapped and they are being tortured daily. Like, they are going through terrible things. And all the while they are trying to prevent the most terrible thing from happening. And guess what happens in the end? The most terrible thing still happens to them. And then, on top of that, something even worse happens to where now our main characters are separated. The thing is, though, when they come back together, it's still going to be exactly where we were when we left off. So things are still going to be really shitty. To me, that's just so frustrating to read, because it's not that fantasies need to be realistic, obviously, but you need to have some type of hope at the end of your book or somewhere in your book in order to hold your readers, or else your readers just end up super depressed. And that's what this book did. And I was just like, you're not making a gritty book, you're just making a depressing book, and it's not exciting to read, it's just sad. Anyways, sorry, didn't mean to go off there, but it's just something that sometimes authors do, and I'm just like, I don't think you understand exactly what you're doing to your readers, because you're doing this without purpose, it feels like. It just feels like you're doing it just to do it, and I hate that. You need to add some wins for your main characters in a bad book for your main characters. I mean, maybe once the entire series is written, I'll read them, and maybe it would be different if the next book was already out and I could have just dove right into that one. But this one just felt like a filler book. It was just really annoying. Okay, those are the 5 books that were my least favorite that I've read this year so far. Now for the good part, my favorite books that I've read so far. First, we will start off with actually a reread, which is Aflame by Penelope Douglas. This is a contemporary romance. It's a book that is later on in a series, follows Bully by Penelope Douglas. Technically, you have to read Bully first, but Aflame is the absolute best because it's them older, they are coming back together. It's like a second chance romance, and it is so good. Penelope Douglas, you can just tell that her writing in Aflame is just so much better than Bully, because I believe Bully is one of her first books she's ever written. So you can definitely tell a difference between how she wrote Bully versus how she wrote Aflame, and it is just so good. The tension between these two characters, the angst between the two characters, and then them finally coming back together, it's just, I eat it up every single time. So if you like romance, if you like spicy romance, if you like second chance romance, I would highly recommend Aflame. I would say read Bully first so then you can get the background, but then Aflame is where it's like really good. Next, we have The Atlas 6 by Olivie Blake. This, I was so surprised at how much I absolutely loved this book. I still think about this book. That's how good it is. It is a dark academia, and it is just full of so many things. It's extremely fascinating. If you like dark academia, if you like fantasy, read this one. I feel like I've said this over and over again when I talk about this book, but it really is if Vicious by V.E. Schwab and Umbrella Academy had a baby. I really feel like anyone and everyone would like this book. I don't think it is specific to a type of reader. I just think it is that good. Highly recommend this one. It is so good and definitely one of my favorites of this year. The next book that I have on my list is a bit of a surprise to me, but also, like, it was a surprise to me when I read it that I loved it as much as I did, but it is one that I read during a time when I really needed it, and it is Georgie All Along by Kate Clayborn. This is another contemporary romance, but it is also about this girl named Georgie who's trying to figure out her life. She is just doing the best with what she has. She lost her job in the big city and she moves back home to her really small town, and there she meets Levi, who is the town recluse. He used to be town bad boy, now town recluse, and they bond and they just try and figure out life together, and they're both going through different struggles that, oddly enough, I was going through at the same time. I absolutely love the writing in this one. I love the storyline. I love the relationship between the two main characters. It's very cute, very sweet. So if you just like contemporary romances, it would be good. But also, it's like a really good self-discovery novel as well. So highly recommend this one. It's so good. The next one that I have, I feel like won't come as a surprise to anyone, and it is Carrie, Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. It seems like everyone has their one Taylor Jenkins Reid book that they absolutely love, if not all of them. And for me, it is Carrie, Soto is Back. I absolutely love Carrie Soto. I just found her to be such a fascinating character. There were parts of her that I related to really hard, some parts that like I didn't want to relate to, but I did. I love the juxtaposition of Carrie and her relationship with winning versus her relationship with her father. I highly recommend this one. I also don't think that this one is just for girls. I think that anyone and everyone should read it just because it is that good. And also, Taylor Jenkins Reid's writing is just so simple, and yet she says so much with just a few words that I think is just extremely unique and extremely difficult to do. She packs a punch, and that is so fascinating to me. So highly recommend this one. Please read it if you haven't. And then the last book that I have on my favorites list is The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. This one is a more fantasy/fantasy romance. It's kind of like a Hunger Games type situation, but like more brutal. It is so good. It is so fascinating. I think a big part of that is Carissa's writing. She knows how to balance things really well. She knows how to write really good characters and a really good character arc. She knows how to write a very interesting plot that's not too heavy or too plot heavy or description heavy. She knows how to write a very good world outside of that, build up that world so you feel very immersed in it, and she writes really good chemistry and tension between our two main characters. If you are looking for a good fantasy romance, I would highly recommend that one. I want to read more of her books now just because I've heard that her books are really, really good, and I'm a big fantasy romance girly, so you know I am going to read those. I am going to eat those up. Okay, and that is it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you pick up some of my favorites that I have read so far. Thanks so much for watching, and I will talk to you all again soon. Bye!